Hello and welcome. I am Matt Roddy, and this is the Greater Prescott podcast, where we talk about, you guessed it, all things Greater Prescott. Today, I want to welcome my guest, Ryan Verna. Ryan, thank you very much for being on the podcast.
Well, thank you for having me.
The backstory is that the car that sits outside this garage was my favorite car that I saw at the Veterans Car Show back in April. And sure enough, a photo came across Instagram and I made a comment like, man, that was my favorite car. And then I think you said something like, oh, thanks a lot. And we just kind of struck up a little conversation. And I invited you onto the pod and you said you would.
Let's do it.
So this is the really fun thing about the podcast. You know, I figured you're a car guy because the car is, and which we'll talk about more, is clearly just a car guy's car. But come to find out, you also did 20 years for the LAPD.
Correct.
And so there's always more to the story than what it may seem like. And that's why I like this table, so that we can just talk for 45 minutes or something and just the story comes out.
Sure.
So thanks for your time.
Well, thank you for having me again.
Kick it off. Where were you born and raised? What did you do when you were a kid? I like to connect the dots along the way so that the listeners can go, oh, so that's why he's a car guy, or that's why he was a cop.
Yeah, so I was born in Mission Hills, California, which is the San Fernando Valley. My dad was a police officer at the time, and so we lived there for a couple of years, and then went out to Thousand Oaks. I lived there until I was, about 11. Went to Oregon for a few years, and that's about it. Came back to California and went to college in Lake Tahoe, and started my career in law enforcement.
What'd you go to school for?
Criminology.
Okay.
Just studied criminology, but mainly went there for the snowboarding.
What is that? Because I feel like I've heard enough people say that where I'm like, actually, I don't have any clue what that is.
To be honest with you, I don't remember.
We don't lie on this podcast, right? So
it was 2.5 years of I don't know. It's a blur. I don't think I learned anything that was related to my job ultimately, but it was just one of those things. You go to college when you graduate high school, and that was it. So
we're not going to go on this tangent, but I'd love to talk about that at some point because you and I both have young kids, and we've already started talking that you may not go to college. Right. Like the world is changing. So I got to stop my tangent, but college is not for most people. And I wish looking back that I wouldn't have gone, but my parents didn't know any different.
The only thing it did for me was it enabled me to move up in my career because at a certain point they required college units to become a detective. Beyond that, I think it's highly pointless for a lot of people.
For most people.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
So what'd you do when you were a kid? So you moved to Oregon for a short time. Did you get into snowboarding, or did you guys have a boat? There's a lot of water there.
Yeah, so I met a lot of good friends, so I still lifelong friends. But
Cool.
I got into snowboarding up there.
Okay.
And so in high school, it snowed right in the neighborhood, so we actually built a little snowboard park right in our neighborhood, and we had some rails and things. I mean, this is going back to the early to mid 90s. Yeah. So way back when. But
actually, was snowboarding like just becoming a thing? I don't really remember.
So my first board, and it was secondhand, but it was like an old Burton, like all mountain deal. I mean, like, and it weighed a ton, and but it was. That's what we had.
Oh, totally.
So,
yeah. You didn't know any different.
Exactly. So I learned to turn on a little hill that we built in our backyard. It was cool.
Yeah. Nice. Did you live close to the beach? It's very stereotypical that if you live in Southern California, you do the beach thing, which is not at all the case.
Yeah. So that was literally the one thing. So about moving here was, the weather in California. I don't think it's that great, to be honest with you. I mean, there's a few months out of the year.
That's what my best friend who lives right here says.
There's a few months out of the year where it's like nice and mild, and the rest it's either sweltering hot or where we lived it was kind of cool. But the beach is like always the big thing. It's a big draw. It's a big draw. Well, I mean, I went to the beach maybe once a year.
And I feel like that's what most locals say.
Yeah.
Oh,
so
that's funny. So tell us why criminology.
So my dad was in law enforcement. He was a police officer at LAPD. And in 1983, so I was 4 years old.
That's when I was born.
Okay, yeah. So in 83, he was killed in line of duty.
Okay.
So he was on a traffic stop and was shot and killed by two guys, and which is actually, what are we now? How old are you?
I am 38.
38. So 38 years later, it's still going on in court.
Okay.
So still working its way through. We came back on an appeal, and so we're heading to another jury trial in a few months. So so it never ends. But anyway, so that's how I kind of forged my path. My brother and I are both in law enforcement, or we're in law enforcement.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's it.
Okay.
Yeah.
What brought you to Prescott?
A good question.
You still wondering?
No. I know what it was. So actually, one of the guys I work with when I was a detective, he had brought up Prescott.
Okay.
And so, we were doing the whole thing, looking at, 10 places around the country to live, Nashville, Austin, Reno, all these different places.
Yep.
They all had a drawback for some reason, right? Weather related mostly, either humid or not, or super cold a lot of times.
Yep.
So it was just on the list, man. We came here, we fell in love with it, and that's how it started. So, and in the process, my parents moved here, my in-laws moved here. A lot of my parents' law enforcement friends moved here because my stepdad was also in law enforcement.
Okay.
And then I know probably at least 5 other people that have either bought property here already or plan to that were in on my department.
Totally.
So, yeah.
That seems to be pretty common where someone's friend from another state moves here and obviously they keep in touch and they then come and visit and and then all of a sudden it's this cycle of people from an area or a certain family that just they end up here.
I mean, it's a great place. I mean,
It's a great place.
people are friendly. The climate's awesome.
Yep.
If you're in outdoor activities, it's got everything.
Yeah.
It's great.
So we're in your garage.
Yep.
Your detached garage. Is this thing air conditioned?
It is actually.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the amazing part is it's not that cool in here necessarily, but in the summertime you can still be in a garage and not have, and it doesn't have to be super cold.
Right.
Just the weather here is amazing.
It is.
That's what I'm getting at.
It is. Yeah. Definitely.
It's
we're actually
lovely.
sitting underneath one of my cars.
Yes. So when I first learned, I think I saw a photo of your garage, and I'm like, I would love to do a podcast underneath a Ben Pack lift. Like, it doesn't get any better.
Yeah.
I shared some of my story. My dad was a huge car guy, and the stuff that you have done with your cars is just the kind of stuff that my dad was good at, and I have a huge appreciation for it.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Before we talk about cars, actually, mention a little bit about, let's go back. You had one of your friends growing up, his father owned a body shop or something. Kind of, how did you get into this whole car thing? Because that's also part of your story.
Yeah, so my buddy Dusty, I met in Oregon, and his dad, was an old school hot rodder. And, so he was a body man by trade, but I mean, his passion was customizing cars.
Okay.
So, so when I was 16, I bought a 58 Chevy panel truck. And
no kidding. The one right there.
Yeah,
You've had it for a long time.
A long time.
Awesome.
So that was the first real car that I worked on.
Okay.
And, with his guidance and shaving the drip rails and, doing some bumper work and body work and things like that.
Yep.
It became a passion. And also my dad, obviously I didn't know him well growing up, but he was.
You said you were only 4 when
I was 4,
he was
right?
killed? Okay.
Yeah, but I mean, he always had projects. He had an old Corvette, growing up, and he had a Carmen Ghia that he redid.
Yes.
So like all this stuff, right? So it's kind of in my blood, I guess. And,
totally.
Yeah, I really enjoy getting out here. It's a stress relief for me, and So
my parents met at the drag strip.
Yeah,
like that. That's the
awesome.
world I grew up in. And
right.
I appreciate this kind of stuff.
Yep.
So what year did you start on the PD?
2000.
2000.
Yeah.
Okay. What did you start? What position where do you start off? How's that all? Give people a rundown for, you got to go through some sort of program initially.
Right. So yeah, you do.
Actually, what's the pre-employment process? Because it's is a little
I'm sure it's
stressful.
changed. So
okay.
Yeah, I'm sure it's not the same anymore. But the bottom line, the application process for me was about 6 months.
Okay.
And it's just a series of, everything from a background in psychology, written test. It's a bunch of stuff. And then once you go through that, I went to the academy. So the academy at the time was a 7-month academy.
Okay.
And then once you complete that, in Los Angeles in LAPD, you're put on probation. So You get with a training officer or multiple,
Yep.
through your time. But it's a year process.
Okay.
And then at that point, I guess you're kind of blessed, and you become, police officer. It's no longer probation.
Do you have any idea how many of you people who went through the academy made it past that probation period?
Oh,
just like out of a percentage?
Most of them.
Okay.
Yeah, I think
Great.
we maybe had like one or two that either decided it wasn't for them or
Yeah.
or
I
that
think
they weren't meeting the requirements.
That's why it's perfect.
Right.
Like, yeah, you just sort of filter out, do you really want to do this?
Exactly.
Is this the right fit?
Right. Exactly. Exactly. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So what was your first schedule like? Do you get on the night crew?
Jeez.
Graveyard? I know it's so long ago.
I want to say it was on day watch.
Okay.
Yeah, I was fortunate. I didn't really have to work a lot of mornings, and mornings was like 6 to 6 in the morning. So
Okay.
yeah, that was the brutal one. You
Yeah.
felt like a vampire. I didn't like that too much, but I was put on days,
Okay.
and
Do you start off as just kind of a regular? I don't even know this world, like a regular
yeah.
cop.
Yeah, exactly. So you're assigned basically to a radio car. So I was fortunate. I got to work in Hollywood my first year on probation, and so very interesting. And it was also in that year when we had 9/11 happen. So, look, it's Hollywood's an odd area. I mean, I don't know if you've ever been there or hung out there, but it's
No, but you hear enough stories that it's
Yeah.
a very unique,
it
interesting
is.
place.
Hollyweird, yeah. So it's
Hollyweird.
so it's very unique, and it's got a very liberal bend to it.
Okay.
And it was interesting. My most vivid memory of that time period was, in the days prior to 9/11, you had people that could care less, about law enforcement, and it's just,
Yeah.
it is what it is, right? And then, the day following law enforcement, you literally have people pull up next to you and say, "Thank you for your service. God bless you guys." And it's just the tweak. And I know we're not there in society right now.
Right.
And there's something will bring it back, and it's unfortunate that it's going to cause that to bring it back. But
It will take something fairly
it's
dramatic.
a pendulum, yeah. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, it was weird. And then the other vivid memory was about a month after that is when all of the anthrax attacks started happening. Right,
Okay.
everybody was so important there that they kept getting white powder.
Gotcha.
So yeah, and it was the nonstop anthrax calls.
Okay.
So yeah,
Interesting. How long were you a regular?
police officer.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Before because you also did some other things.
Yeah, so 3 years roughly on patrol,
Mm-hmm.
and then after that, I went and worked gangs for a couple years.
Okay.
In the valley, and then I worked at task force, which was very cool. So that was
What do you do for a task force?
so that one was uniform task force. So it was called the Violent Crime Task Force.
Okay.
So it's everything that's not popular in law enforcement right now. So
Okay.
we would go out and we would do pedestrian stops, consensual
Mm-hmm.
encounters, find PC to stop somebody.
Yep.
But it's all the stuff that's not popular right now.
Okay.
But the bottom line is it was responsible for a lot of reduction in crime because you're getting the bad people off the streets.
No surprise.
Guns, dope. I mean, all this
Yeah.
stuff. And it's all based on walking up to someone saying, "Hey, how are you doing, sir?
Yep.
Can we talk?"
Yep.
That's it.
Right.
And it's crazy how things snowball from there. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting. What did you choose to be on the gang unit? I mean, obviously
Oh, yeah.
you chose. Did you, before you started as a police officer, were there areas that you're like, I'm more passionate about working on the gang unit, working on task force? Did you have kind of a vision of what your time in the force would look like?
Well, I can tell you this. So I did my 3 years of patrol. There
Mm-hmm.
was a couple incidents that came up that I wasn't happy about, and I felt that getting out of patrol would have been best for me. So I started looking at different options.
Okay.
I didn't have a passion for working gangs at the time,
Okay.
but as I worked it, I got more and more passionate about it.
Okay.
To the point where my partner and I were assigned to monitor white gangs in the valley.
Okay.
Okay, so that consisted of skinheads. There's a group called the Peckerwoods, which is basically a prison-based. It's like a hybrid street gang, prison gang.
Okay.
And then above that, you got more organized groups that are outlaw motorcycle gangs. So we had all that stuff.
Yeah.
And it really had a passion for it. So following working gangs, I went and worked this task force.
Mm-hmm.
And the task force, I mean, was not a gang task force necessarily, but I mean, it's a gang-ridden area, so that's what you run
Naturally,
into for the most part.
you work with them.
Right. So based on that, I mean, as I became a detective after that, I went and, I mean, I've testified as a gang expert in court for, I couldn't tell you everything from, white gangs, skinheads, prison-based gangs, Mexican street gangs, and prison gangs, and black gangs as well. So I mean, I've run the gamut on what I've learned and what I've done.
Yeah.
None of it helps me now, but it was interesting at the time.
Absolutely.
For sure. So,
Yeah.
so it was good.
What'd you do after the task force?
I made detective, and I was assigned up in the valley as a detective. I did, I think, a month as a domestic violence detective, which not my gig.
Okay.
And then I was fortunate that somebody kind of recognized my interest in gangs, and I became a gang detective for a couple years.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's the same job, it's just you're not on the street. You're basically taking the cases that have already been, people have been arrested or whatnot, and you're investigating them, right?
Working on those.
And then from there, I was fortunate. My supervising detective basically saw that I had a talent, I guess, and put me in touch with the homicide supervisor and said, "Hey, this guy would be a good fit." And so I spent the last 9 years of my career as a homicide detective.
Okay. And just to clarify, you did 20 years.
Yes.
So 11 years pre-homicide detective, and
Right.
then last 9 years.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. So.
It's quite a way to end it.
It is. It is. Yeah. It was. It was. It was a good 9 years. I'm glad it's over. I don't miss being on standby and being called in the middle of the night and having to respond. I miss the people I worked with for sure.
Absolutely. I mean,
good
talk
people.
about a tight knit group.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep.
We had a great squad, and I spoke to you before about this, but my partner of 7 years in homicide, a person named Gene Parshell, he actually committed suicide about a year before I left the department, and it really rocked.
Which was how many years ago?
Yeah, so it was 2019.
It was not long ago.
No,
is what
it
I'm
wasn't.
getting.
Yeah. So, so it kind of rocked us as a group, and me personally, obviously. But
so I shared with you
dude.
beforehand.
Yeah.
I almost have I didn't share this part. I almost have my PhD in clinical psychology.
Yeah.
So this kind of stuff it's really fascinating.
Yeah.
It usually kind of gets swept under the rug, but it's a real problem.
Sure.
Go ahead and speak to it, because the line of work that you were in, the schedule that you had, things like that, it's a recipe for challenges.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I was fortunate. I never saw it in myself, any kind of changes until after Gene's suicide.
Okay.
And then you have time to reflect and say, hey, look, what am I doing differently that I did, 10 years ago?
Yeah.
And yeah, there were some changes, and there was definitely some things to look at and address, and so I had already planned on retiring and getting out, so that wasn't the decision that forced me this direction, but it definitely helped say this is time for sure. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah.
But yeah, so Gene, I mean, one of the best dudes I've ever met.
Of course.
And
That's the heartbreaking part of
Yeah.
it. These guys are amazing, and gals.
Yeah.
They're awesome.
Right. Well, I've said this 1,000 times too, though, that, if I had to put a list of 100 people down that would have potentially committed suicide in their lives, he wouldn't have made the list.
He's at the bottom or not on the list.
He wouldn't have made the list, yeah. And so it was definitely a shock to us, and there wasn't a lot of writing on the wall for it.
Yeah.
And so ultimately what happened was he had sleep deprivation, and it was all related to job-related stress, and had fought it for years through, over-the-counter stuff, prescription stuff, herbal, everything. And ultimately just, I think it ate him up, and to the point where he, mentally had issues.
Yeah.
But it wasn't showing outwardly, it really wasn't. And so...
Interesting.
Yeah,
From a
I've learned from
psychological
that, too.
standpoint, it's fascinating.
Yeah.
Someone can work almost basically have two lives in a sense.
Sure.
Their outward one that you saw,
Yeah.
and then an inward one that they were able to keep inward.
Yeah. And so, I have a little bit of guilt about it, because,
Of course.
should I have asked certain questions? Should I have done something differently?
Yep.
Should, all these different things, but...
It's probably one of the most common things when someone commits suicide is a bunch of people feeling guilty. It's
Sure.
like, I could have done this.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, thanks for sharing that.
Yeah.
it's always interesting to get just a glimpse into people's life
Yeah.
and jobs, and especially a job like that.
Yeah.
I did have a retired DEA agent on the show.
I saw that.
And it was just fascinating. It was nice for him to just like let us into his crazy world.
Sure. Sure.
Because most of us, we don't know about that.
Sure.
And I think it helps bring perspective. So when you see a police officer, I understand Prescott may be a little different, maybe not as crime ridden. But the point is, they're under the gun a lot of their day. They have a challenging career.
Sure.
So go thank them, just and take it easy when you get pulled over. I don't know. I'm just be aware.
Yeah.
I guess is the important part.
I say it always. Look, I always have respect for someone until they show me otherwise. Right. Yeah. So I police officer, homeless person on the street, anybody I want to run into. It doesn't matter who it is. I have respect for them until they show me otherwise.
Yeah.
Because you don't know what someone's history is in life, and exactly.
Yeah. So how long before you retired did you start thinking about retirement?
Oh, God.
Because you put in 20 years.
Yeah, so it was a couple years before I actually retired. We were, we were on the road somewhere, and I was talking to my wife, and I'm like, hey, look, we were started talking about finances and this and that, and I go, look, if we could swing this, would you want to do it? Because she was fortunate at that point that she's in a career where she could work from home and work anywhere. Okay. And honestly, I don't want to raise my kids in Southern California. I just don't. And we were close to the valley where we lived, and it's a seedy place for the most part. There's nice pockets, but
of course,
there's a lot of seedy places, and it's Hollywood adjacent. Yeah, I don't want her in the club scene. I don't want none of that stuff. So yeah, so it just made sense to find a place to go, and and it's no guarantee that coming to a place like this is any better.
Absolutely not.
So it's not a guarantee.
Yeah, you'd be naive to think that.
Right, exactly.
Yes,
but the chances are a lot better.
The probability is lower that you'll run into certain things.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So
okay.
Yeah.
So then Prescott.
Here we go.
Do you remember the day that you put in your I'm going to retire? How does that work? Do you go to your supervisor or you?
So you actually don't put in for retirement until like a month beforehand.
Okay.
So, but I knew for a long time going in, and everybody knew.
Everyone knew.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
interesting.
Yeah. But for me, it was more of I really cared about my cases. I cared about the victims' families that I dealt with. And it was more about having all my loose ends wrapped up before I left.
Good point.
Because if I was still working the streets, you can clock in one day and clock out the next and
leave,
done,
no problem,
right?
But you've got a paper trail of stuff. You've got a trail of years of work.
I still have cases working their way through the court system.
Exactly.
So, you can't just leave that up and say, give it to this detective and say, take care.
Yeah.
Good luck. So I was fortunate. Everything was kind of wrapped up before I left.
That's wonderful.
So,
all right.
Yeah.
So now you're in Prescott.
Yep.
A year and a half.
Yep.
What's life like post PD?
So I'm probably busier now than I've ever been.
So this is it's like you're 43?
I will be in September. Yeah.
Okay, so you're 42. You're super young.
Yep.
Obviously you've retired from one career. You're doing other stuff.
Right.
You ask most retired people, and these are people in their 60s, they're like, I've never been busier.
Right.
It's such a funny thing.
It's funny. So the people at work before I left, like, what are you gonna do? You're gonna sit on a couch all day? You're gonna just watch TV all day? I'm like, I think I got stuff to do for years. So, there's no worry on that aspect. So, yeah.
And based on what you're doing here, you ain't stopping until you're in a box.
Right. Right.
I didn't ask you this. Mm-hmm. At what part of your life did you meet your wife? When did you get married? And you've got a couple children.
So I was actually married before.
Okay.
I got divorced in 2008.
All right.
I think it was 2008. Yeah. So in 2009, so the day I found out I was getting divorced, I called up a buddy of mine who I worked gangs with at the time.
Okay. And
he had just been through one. Okay. So I'm like, hey, dude, run me through what's going to happen here, right? And so we had a conversation. It was pretty emotional, and he goes, hey, by the way, I got this old friend of mine. You really should meet her. She has she's into poker, and she lives in Porter Ranch, and she all this kind of stuff. Yeah. And so I'm like, yeah, it sounds cool. I'm probably not ready just yet.
Exactly.
But maybe at some point. So I think it was like 6 months later, I hit him back up and said, hey, what about that girl you told me about? And so that was it. We it was a blind date basically.
Okay.
I mean, we chatted for a little bit before that, but
Yeah.
yeah, blind date and
Leave
so
it to.
I was the guy though that was always like, I'm never getting married again.
Yeah.
I'm over that. I'm done with it. And then of course. So here
And
we
you
go.
go through different seasons, things
Yep.
change.
Yep.
But I was going to say, just kind of as a side note, leave it to a guy friend to, like, you're talking to him about something serious like divorce.
Yeah.
And he introduces you to a lady. You're like,
yeah.
this is not quite the time, man.
Yeah. It's pretty funny.
Guys.
Yep.
So you've been married how many years?
10 years. We're coming up on 11 in October.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
We just had our 11th.
Nice. Congratulations.
Yes. And
Yeah.
how old are the children?
9 and 4.
Isn't it amazing being a dad?
Yep.
Unless you have kids, you can't understand.
I know.
It is just amazing.
Yep. And
Gosh.
credit to my wife because she was the one that kind of forced it. Like, hey, if we're gonna be together, we're gonna have kids. And I'm like, I don't know if I want kids. And
Yeah.
But no, I'm super happy that we made the choice and we have our kids. So.
Yeah, now you're getting settled in here.
Yep.
So let's transition. So you move here to Prescott. You basically, obviously, you've got more work to do than you ever have before. You've got a family, you got a house, you got projects out the wazoo. Where's your focus now? Meaning, obviously, the kiddos, the wife, the family, but then start running us through some of the investment stuff because we haven't touched on that. But that's something else you're really passionate about.
Yeah. So, well, a couple, I guess, different type of investment things. So, we had always, from the time we decided that I was going to retire, we had always looked into, let's try to buy some properties and I could be a property manager. I can be the handyman. I can do all that kind of stuff.
Totally.
Right. So, that was always the plan coming out here. And, so we've kind of put that into motion. So
where did that come from? Did someone from your family, did family friends have rentals that kind of intrigued you?
So my wife's in the real estate industry. She's in the title part of it. So, she had some investment properties prior to me meeting her.
Okay.
And so, but they were all like other places. They were all passive investments. So, going forward, I knew that wasn't the way that we wanted to do it. I mean, for a number of reasons, but taxes being the main one, right? So it's important to be an active participant.
It's wonderful.
It is, because the IRS, if you're not and you claim it, there's an issue there. So so we wanted to be basically active in our investments, and so we've talked about it, but I had a history of doing projects, and so I added on 1,700 square feet to my first house. Built a 4-car garage there. I built a huge barn in my last house. So I like building projects.
Yeah.
And so cars, houses, whatever it is. So so that's kind of how it is. So right now my day is basically going to one of our houses that we have here and working on it and different projects there. So I'm hoping to wrap that up soon so I can get back to cars because that's my passion.
Yeah.
But this pays some bills. So
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And long term, it's really nice.
Yeah. And so the other thing, the other investment stuff that I think talked about originally when we talked on the phone was stock market. So, we were fortunate that we sold our house when we did. We had some equity in it in California, and we kind of spotted that the market was tanking after COVID hit, and so kind of moved some money in the stock market, and the original plan was to kind of go with large cap investments that were beaten down, right? But I found a niche in the OTC markets, which is the over-the-counter stuff. It's the really volatile penny stocks. Love them. It's great.
Okay.
So it's become a real thing. So
do you day trade on stuff like that, or is it more you put your money in and be patient?
I would consider myself more of a swing to long-term investor.
Okay.
And, some of this stuff, I mean, the OTC stuff is not really investable. It's more of a swing.
Okay.
But there are companies there that do have potential. So, yeah. So, but it's been real interesting.
Yeah. How'd that investment, how did that side of the investment interest come up?
I'd always been invested, so I think I have my first E-Trade account back in 2000 or something. Oh,
okay, yeah.
But
so it's something you've been at least vaguely interested in.
Vaguely, right? So I was never super active with it though either. And then I don't know. I mean, it was just watching the market and knowing that it was going to come back. It's just a matter of when, how fast it was going to come back. And it just made sense to me at the time that was
Yeah, you
go
had
time.
conviction.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep. That's what investors need, conviction.
Yep.
Yep.
And patience.
Oh, absolutely.
And patience. I think a lot of
yeah,
people
it's not
are
all they
so
need.
worried, like, oh, it's not
Yeah.
moving yet. Nothing's happening. Well,
Don't
just
look.
Give it some time.
Don't look.
Yeah, give it some time.
Yeah, put your money in and don't look.
Yep.
Yeah, like technically my mom bought the house we live in. We just pay her mortgage.
Yeah.
I've never looked at what the Zillow rate is
Right.
because it just doesn't matter. But of course my mom does, and she'll tell me, I'm like, Mom, it doesn't matter.
Right.
Like
Right.
we're in it for the long haul.
Yeah.
It is what it is.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, obviously there's people who day trade, totally different ball game.
Sure.
The strategy's
Yep.
completely different.
The
But for
one-
most people,
The one thing I'll say, though, is that I think, if you have someone managing your money, or if you are in, ETFs or the mutual funds or something like that, I think you're almost conditioned to accept that, 8% is a good return on your investment.
you're
Just
brainwashed.
accept it. Just
You're
accept it.
brainwashed.
Dude, there is so much money out there to be made, and it's not hard to actually do the
In a
research and figure
ethical,
it out.
moral way.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, you're not doing anything illegal.
Absolutely.
You get to feel good about
Yep.
it.
Yep.
Totally agree. This
Yep.
idea that you can put your money in the S&P and get 8% over your life
Yeah.
is mostly true.
Right. And it's not bad money, but
No,
but the potential
not
out there
at
is
all.
amazing.
And I think what you bring up is actually really clear. I want the listeners to get this, get educated, because that changes the game.
Right.
Period.
And I'm not talking about going to find a course to pay somebody to teach you. It's all out there for free.
It's
It's free.
all out there for free.
Yep. Yep.
Amen. You know how I learned how to do all this video stuff? For free.
Yep.
That's just how it works. Like,
Right.
if you're willing to put in the time and effort
Oh, absolutely.
and maybe make a couple phone calls, ask some questions, just some people who are doing something,
Yep.
they're usually ready and willing to help because they like to
Yeah.
help eager people.
Absolutely.
And so it's out there.
Yep.
Go learn.
Right.
Oh, man, I think that.
So I've been pushing my friends as much as I can. Like,
Good.
hey guys, yeah, I mean, if you have the extra money to do it, do it.
Do it.
Do it now. And it's kind of like real estate. Do it now.
Exactly.
Don't wait.
Nope.
Don't wait.
No.
So
Like, oh, I think the market's going to go down. Well, just keep learning at the very least. Just keep learning.
Absolutely.
Because the guys who are really good at this stuff, they've been. I'm pretty obsessed with Warren Buffett. He's a fascinating guy.
Yeah.
I recently heard basically this 9-hour kind of biography
Yeah.
on him, and he was like 6 years old slinging stuff
Yeah.
at school, and he was just obsessed about learning about money.
Sure.
And he has spent his whole life learning.
Yep.
Just learning.
Yep.
He's the guy who reads most of his day.
Yeah.
Because that's where the learning comes from.
Yep.
It's fascinating. Like,
Yeah.
it's not like it just happened.
Yeah. Well, and there's a famous quote that he has, and I'll just paraphrase it, but buy the fear. When everybody else is afraid, that's when you buy. And so do the opposite of what the crowd is doing.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know the name Charlie Munger, his
Yeah,
partner. So
yeah.
there were, I think this was between the two, but one of them had an investment that they thought was good, and they wanted to put a good sizable amount of money
Yeah.
in it. And the other one says, like, how convicted are you? He said, well, I'm 100%.
Yeah.
He said, well, then let's double it.
Right.
It's this idea that if you're convicted,
Yep.
really do it.
Yep. Well, I mean, I have a position right now I'm looking at getting into. I'm already in it for a decent amount, but I'm looking at it going, if I take this money right now and move it into this position, I mean, I'm looking at like gains that are ridiculous.
Ridiculous.
And so, yeah, do I have conviction though? Put my money where my mouth is.
I'm
right?
asking
let's
you, do
it.
you have conviction?
Yep.
That's the question.
Yep.
If you
Yep.
do it. If not, no,
Yep.
because you won't sleep well at night.
Right. Gotta roll the dice every
Both-
once in a while, right?
One way or the other.
Yep. Yep. Exactly.
Yeah. So get educated,
Yep.
people. And it sounds like you've just spent time educating yourself.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely.
That's cool.
Yeah.
That's really exciting.
Yeah.
And anyone can do this.
Absolutely.
Anyone
Absolutely.
can do this.
In a but the stock market in particular, I mean, there are so many. I mean, you're talking like YouTube videos and all that kind of stuff. But for me, what I found is important is having a Twitter account, because there's so much stock market information available on Twitter. I mean, not only just the other traders, but CEOs, putting out messages and things like that. But then there's also an application called Discord, which has come up big, and I think that was started with gamers as a way to communicate back and forth.
Yep.
But you hear about it when they talk about the whole AMC and GameStop stuff, but it's legit. I mean, and you have groups that are. I'm in a group right now of 6,000 people, and it's all legit information based on solid due diligence, and
Exactly.
and the plays are solid, and it's out there, guys.
It's out there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
Oh,
Yeah.
I love it. I'm glad you're on Discord.
Yeah.
I'm loving it.
Yeah. So.
Let's transition to cars.
Yeah, let's do it.
So we're sitting under a Mini.
Yeah.
But it ain't just any Mini.
No.
So just kind of bring us forward. You bought a panel truck when you were 17, 16?
16, yeah.
Was that your first car?
It wasn't my first car, but
Okay.
it was my second, yeah.
So you're 16 and you're already buying a second car.
Yep.
That's my point.
Yep.
So kind of bring us linearly along your car-loving life.
Sure. Well, let me just talk about the panel truck
Yeah.
first. So,
It's right here, guys. You just can't see it.
yeah, you can't see it, but I'm thinking about taking it to the next Cars and Coffee. So about
Bring it.
4 weeks from now. So, yeah, basically, I fell in love with Gravedigger as a kid, right? So it's like,
Oh, that's...
yeah. So I'm like, I gotta have a
If
Gravedigger.
you don't know, you
right?
don't know.
Yeah, exactly. So, I don't know. I was in high school, and there was like this panel truck was parked off the side of the road, and it hadn't moved in a long time, and so I started leaving business cards and stuff on it, knocking on doors and whatnot, and I bought it for $500. So, and at the time, I think it had like some boat seat or something in the front seat. It had a little 3-speed on the floor, and we used to do burnouts going up and down the street in it, and before we started doing work on it, but. Yeah, so I've had it for a long time, and it's one of those things like I don't think I could ever get rid of it, So you bury me in the back of it and just dig a big hole and drop the whole thing in. So, but yeah, so I've been in cars for a long time, and so the car you saw at the car show,
Yes.
I've owned that for about 3 years,
Okay.
and it was a partially completed project
Okay.
when I bought it. But that being said, I've had the whole thing apart, basically down to nothing, and redone everything. So, but you'll notice on the side, right? So
We're talking about your
Datsun
Datsun 1200.
Yeah, Datsun 1200,
Okay.
yeah. So the roundels on the side, you'll see the number in there, that 30601. That's actually my partner's old serial number, the one that passed away.
Yeah.
So, it looks like a racing number, but it's actually a serial number.
Gotcha.
And he was kind of integral in parts of that build. At the time he passed away, he had told me right before that, like, hey, you need to build this front splitter on it. It would be really cool if you did this, and And so I was building that as he passed, and so I wasn't finished with it when he passed, but it was kind of hard to get back in the garage to build, but I did, and I had it done in time with the pinstriping and the roundels for his memorial.
No kidding.
So his kids are all into cars and things like that. So I drove that to memorial
really
and parked
neat.
it out front, and so it's really important to me. So. Another thing I probably never get rid of,
Yeah.
So, and then the Mini we're sitting underneath. It's a 75 Mini. The only thing that remains that's really a Mini is the body shell of it. But even the top is carbon fiber, so it's really not much left of it. But
Did you chop it at all?
no, it's not chopped.
Okay.
No.
Then why do you put a carbon fiber?
So the roof sheet metal, right? So it had a little bit of rust in the corners, and so I mean the whole front of the car, the doors, rear boot lid, I mean it's all carbon fiber. So I figured might as well just add instead of trying to deal with rust, might as well just add a carbon fiber roof to it
Let's
too.
start fresh. Okay.
Yeah. So but it's all tube chassis. It's a rear engine, which is out of a Hayabusa motorcycle.
How many cc's
turbocharged.
is a Hayabusa
I think it's 1600 cc's. Yeah, so
in a motorcycle?
Yeah.
It's crazy.
And even this model Hayabusa, the stock horsepower was like 175 horsepower.
Okay.
So and it's dyno tuned already, but it's putting out around 224 horse, and then so it's got boost to it.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it's all custom, and I started working on this after I got back from SEMA one year, and I just got motivated.
That's on my bucket list.
Yeah.
I've never been to SEMA.
Going this year again. So
Good.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Talk about inspiration.
Oh yeah, it's awesome. I mean, yeah, you go there and it's like instant motivation.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, yeah. So, no, I'm really excited to get this thing done on the road, and I was actually building this when I was working, and I would get up at like 3 a.m.
Oh my gosh.
and put in work.
You're crazy.
Yeah. So, and then I put in work until about 6, and then go to work. So
yeah.
But yeah, man, I love fabrication. I love doing the work, and so yeah.
It's a piece of artwork to me.
It's my creative outlet.
Exactly.
For sure.
Yeah. I look at something like this, and like I told you before we started, my wife would look at this and she would just see a hunk of metal and some wheels, and I'm like, no way, it's got this and that, and it's just all custom, and I just really appreciate this stuff. It's
awesome.
Fascinating.
Yeah, I can't wait to show it off in public, because it's not that it's like, unique in the sense that no one's ever done it before. It's been done, but it's unique in the sense that I don't think anybody around here has done it. So
No, exactly. Yeah. Any other projects that you want to get at in the future? So what's on the? I know you've got a bucket list of stuff, of vehicles you'd like to purchase. And
So
work on.
my stepdad and I have been talking about doing a project. I need to get this out of the way first, but so there's a company called Factory 5 that makes basic kit cars, and they do everything from Shelby Cobras to more modern styled bodies. But the one he wants is like a 33 hot rod. So it's basically up to modern chassis with modern suspension. And they're really well known for, how much tech they put into their chassis. So it's not just some, junk that, with a nice body on it. It's a decent performance-based chassis. So that'd be one. And then I do have some more Datsuns to build. So I got 4 sitting in a garage here in town, and 2 of them I'm going to keep, and 2 I will sell and to finance stuff. But yeah, man. And then I've been talking to my wife. I really would love to get a Skyline GTR from Japan. So
you can import them now.
I know.
Yeah,
I know. Model year 96 at this point. So so year, R33 GTR.
How long were those made? I don't know that much about them.
So I'm not sure. The R34 was like the last true Skyline. And then they kind of moved into like the more modern style, and the body style, like the new ones are cool. I think from like 2009 on, but before that they kind of like an Infinity, and that's not really my style. The R34s are cool, but they're way out of my price range. I mean, those cars are going for like 100,000 plus.
They're kind of collector cars almost.
Yeah. Because as the production went, the R32 GTR was probably like the first like big, like, oh my god, this is
thing.
It. Yeah, right. So they made the most GTRs during that production run. Then the R33, they narrowed it down, and then the R34 is like even more. So yeah, the values of the 34s are crazy.
Yeah.
But I've always liked the 33. So I went to Japan, I think I told you, in 1998. I went to the Tokyo Auto Salon. And for people that don't know, that's basically like the SEMA show for Japan. So it's all of their high performance aftermarket stuff at this show. And so at the time, like the R33 GTR was like huge.
The thing.
Yeah, it was like the thing there, and like Mitsubishi Evolutions, and I was lucky enough to have one of those.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so I'd love to do that.
That's so fun. So one reason I love the podcast is because you say something like, I went to Tokyo, and basically the reason people do certain things is because something happened to them in life, and like that's one of the reasons. So growing up, I had a poster of an H1 on my wall. And actually, now that I've moved to Prescott, a place where you could actually have one, I really want one. It's because I had one on my wall. I was obsessed with them when I was little, and so many of people's stories go back to things that happened to them when they were
there's
little.
So many trails around you can take it off.
Exactly. When I was living down in Phoenix, like it would be pointless to own one down there, but up here, absolutely.
So are you talking like old military style, or are you talking like more modern?
No, I'd get a little more modern one. Yeah, just to go.
Some AC and everything.
Yeah, exactly. Just take the family, go truck around, and get outside.
No, that's cool.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Thanks for sharing all about cars.
Yeah.
Man, I love cars.
Yeah, definitely.
Let's transition, and you shared a little bit about this. What brought you to Greater Prescott, what's going to keep you here?
I think what brought us here was, God, we came here, it was beautiful, right? And we both remarked when we were visiting, everybody was so friendly. And I missed that. I missed, living in Southern California, you don't run into that. Everybody's in their own, path, and they're, super focused on whatever they're doing. And it was nice to go into a place where someone's genuinely just friendly and nice. And so, that's one thing that'll keep us here. Just the overall friendliness of it. So
it's cliche if you listen to this podcast, because
Yeah.
that's what everyone
really?
says.
Okay.
But it's 100% true.
yeah.
It's just, like
Yeah.
it's just the way this
Yeah.
town is.
Yeah,
And I know a lot of people are a little nervous because we're growing and things, but even people who are brand new are going, this place is so friendly.
Yeah.
And it
Yeah.
is.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Definitely.
What kinds of things have you done here in the year and a half that you've lived here that you enjoy?
To be honest with you, the first year and a half has been mainly work.
Okay.
So, yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I really haven't even got to experience much of like the outdoor lifestyle just because I've been so busy. But yeah, I would love to get out and
time.
hike with my kids.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So.
Yep. And your kids are getting to the age where it'll just be easier because I still have a couple young kids and we don't do hikes.
Right.
We can go on a trail walk for a little while.
Sure.
So as
Right.
the kids get older, it'll just get easier as well.
Definitely. Definitely.
Nice.
Yeah.
Anything else on being an officer, being an investor, being a car guy that we missed?
I mean, I feel bad for all the people I used to work with. You know, I mean, I feel like it's a no-win situation. You know, it's just not the place to be right now. And it's crazy that if you asked me, you know, years ago, would you suggest, you know, someone going to law enforcement? I'd be like, yeah, sure, why not?
Yeah.
I mean, you know, it's not only do you have the benefits of, you know, helping society and you know, that kind of thing. You have you got a pension, you got, you know, benefits, you got all this stuff
Yes.
that's amazing, right?
Yep.
But now it's like, I think you know, the drawbacks outweigh the benefits of it. And
So sad.
yeah, it is. It really is. And so I feel bad they're in that situation, and you know, that so many people are stuck. But
Yep.
you know, it is what it is, I guess.
It is unfortunately what
Yeah.
it is.
Yeah.
Okay. That's well said.
Yeah.
To wrap up, I'm going to ask you some fun questions.
Let's go.
Since you have lived here just a short time,
Yeah.
you may not have an answer.
All right, let's
But-
go.
But we'll see.
Okay.
Number one, what's your favorite thing about Greater Prescott?
Geez, I mean, I guess going back to what I already said, I don't know. I mean, you know, it's amazing to go to a place where overall people are just nice. Yep. I mean, it's amazing having lived in places where that's not the case.
Yep.
So,
What's your favorite restaurant in Greater Prescott?
it got to be Colt's Barbecue. I'm so stoked that they're building one down by the courthouse.
Isn't that amazing?
Oh, it's amazing.
I know.
Yeah.
We used to drive out to
Yeah.
PV just for that.
Yeah. Oh, I still do.
Right. Yeah,
but-
you have to right now, I guess.
But it's crazy. Like I'm like a total meat eater. Like my favorite thing there is a salad.
Oh, funny.
The Philly salad. Guys, if you're listening, it's amazing. And keep up the good work.
What is the number one thing on your Greater Prescott bucket list?
Wow. I think just to get more engaged with the community and, you know, the car community, the community in general. I've always, you know, run my life ragged, and it would be cool to be able to actually take a couple hours here and there to do something for somebody else. So,
Well said. Yeah. There's a lot of needs, just like there are everywhere.
Sure.
What's your favorite all-time car?
Ooh.
You can name your three, because like this for a car guy is,
God,
it's hard to narrow it.
Yeah, I'm not even sure that I have three favorites.
Start naming them then.
I wouldn't even know where to start. I love so many different things. I mean, I love old school Ford shoeboxes.
Yep.
You know, like 49 and 51 Fords are great. I love 53 and 54 Chevys. I love import stuff. I don't know. I'm weird like that. So
I am also.
yeah, I love things with motor swaps. I mean, I love things that people like have put their time and effort in to make it their own,
Make it unique and special.
Yeah. So it's everything. I don't.
That's kind of how I am too.
Yeah.
I have an appreciation for the automotive industry kind of as a whole.
For me, like, it's cool if you have a car that's like a $300,000, you know, whatever. It does nothing for me. I would much rather drive around one of my shit buckets.
Totally agree. I totally agree.
Yeah.
So I've come to the conclusion that I have zero interest in owning a $300,000 car. However, I would like a garage with 30 cars that are just quirky and unique, and it's like, yeah, today I think I'm going to take that little like dinker out.
That's
and
me.
we also live in a really cool town where we don't have any fast roads. So you can just have little driver cars and just go have fun.
Sure.
Like you can just drive around town. It'd be nice to have a convertible because weather's here.
Yep.
Weather is nice here. So
I
just
agree.
like quirky and unique things, which this car above us is very unique.
Definitely unique.
And that's what I
quirky.
love about it. What are 3 words to describe living in Greater Prescott?
Ooh, slow paced, which is good. Let's see. I think sense of community, and I think just I don't know. I'm searching for a third one here. I think peace is good. So.
It is such a nice slow town.
Yeah.
It is peaceful here.
Dude, my wife and I think on at least a weekly basis, look at each other and go, we are so fortunate that we are here where
Pinching
we are.
yourself?
Yes.
We agree.
Yeah. I mean, looking at where we could have been, I mean, you're talking about LA County with, you know what's going on there. Mm-hmm. It looks like a third world country, and I mean, yeah, we are so fortunate.
Yep.
So fortunate. So.
Amen. If you would not have become a police officer, what type of other work would you have been interested in?
I probably would have gone into construction or mechanic, something like that. I mean,
makes perfect sense.
Yeah, I love working with my hands, and so that was actually the worst part of being a detective, sitting behind a desk. It's just not me.
Yep.
And so yeah, so this is my lifestyle.
And I'm not going to go on the tangent, but that's one reason many people should not go to college. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of jobs that you can use your hands, that you just either go to trade school or just go. So I've heard it said, if you want to own a deli, just go talk to a local deli owner, ask if you can intern there, and just start working and learning.
Yeah.
So whatever you want to do, if you want to become a car craftsman, go over to Prescott Hot Rod Shop.
Right.
If you're really interested, they'll teach you. Mm-hmm. And anyways, there's so many ways to kind of find a career without going to college, and for most people.
100% agree.
Last question. What's your favorite summer activity in Greater Prescott?
I haven't experienced too much. I would say my favorite summer activity is opening up these doors and getting a few hours in here.
Yeah.
So,
Most people, it has something to do with just the weather.
Yeah.
Being outside.
Yep.
It's just beautiful.
Yep.
Okay. What is one question you have for me?
So you contacted me out of the blue about this podcast. What made you start it? Why did you start the podcast?
My ultimate desire is to build an audience so that I can own a private equity company and do some real estate investing.
Nice.
Like, that's the ultimate big picture.
Okay.
And it simply starts with building an audience would be the best way to put it.
Sure.
So a very simple, kind of unassuming, friendly way, start a podcast. I love learning about people's stories.
Yeah.
I've got a background in psychology. It's fascinating. So simply, that's it.
Okay.
So It's like, hey, it started with local business owners because I know a lot of them.
Right.
And then I would also like to have more people like you, like we're just retired people, not necessarily that you have a business to announce to the world, but you just have a story.
Right.
And for most business owners, it's still a linear conversation, just like you and I had.
Sure.
What'd you do when you were a kid? Because you own a chocolate shop, so there's probably some point in your life that your grandma was making chocolates in the kitchen and you just started loving it.
Yeah.
So just connecting the dots. I think it's really fun and interesting, and I enjoy it.
So I got one more question though.
Go for it.
So how do you monetize this?
I don't monetize this yet.
Okay.
And the longer I can go without monetizing it,
the better.
Mm-hmm. Incentives start to get disaligned when you monetize, which isn't always a bad thing.
Right.
So I'm just, and I'm early in the process.
Okay.
I started, my first podcast was June 2nd, 2020.
Oh, wow.
So we're just over, that's 13 months ago.
Yeah.
So I've kind of just started this thing. It's just like investing. You got to be patient.
Sure.
But you got to do the work.
Oh, yeah.
You just got to do the work. And that's what this is.
Nice.
Just doing the work.
Yeah.
Meeting people. And I enjoy it.
Nice.
So that's another nice part. And you can ask more than one question.
Well, you know what I was just thinking right when you said that? There was a guy, and I don't know if you know the name or not, a guy named Huell Hauser. You know that name?
Not offhand.
Okay, you got to look him up. He was a guy, I want to say he was from Oklahoma. He came out to California. He ran, I think at one point he had like 9 different shows on PBS. And his whole thing was, and they were all different little variations of the same thing, but he would go out. It was only in California. He would go out to different places in California and just meet people and interview them about their lives and
I love it.
what they did. I mean, he would do an hour on anything.
Yeah.
And meeting people and so it's almost very similar. I would say you should look him up because
I get some
California's
inspiration.
Gold is what it was called. Yeah. So yeah, it was really cool.
Yep. And we have an interesting town where most people were not born and raised here. They've ended up here. Many people retirement, and other people just, it's a season of life where they came here. So it's really fascinating to hear people's stories.
Yeah.
How the heck did you end up here?
Sure.
One of the people, he hasn't been on the podcast, but for 20 years, he was one of the worldwide financial, I don't even know his title, but he was a worldwide financial guy for Intel. So he helped run the multi-billion-dollar company, Intel.
Yeah.
Like, and now he is retired here. He's an investment property guy as well. And it's like, the people that you meet that end up here have fascinating stories.
Oh, yeah.
I love it.
That's awesome.
That's all I got.
Cool.
Thank you so much for your time.
Well, again,
I really
thank you for
appreciate
having
it.
me. Yeah.
It's hard to describe what the podcast kind of is beforehand.
Sure.
But, now that we're done, you kind of get it.
Yeah,
and
yeah,
it's just a casual conversation. So
Awesome.
I appreciate it. Let's close it out with a smile. Guys, thank you very much for joining us, and have a great day.